Hi there, it's Tracy Kierden from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint a blue jay. He's perched on blossom branches with a swirly sky background. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I am using an 11 by 14 inch canvas, and I'm going to start by painting the sky background. So it's a very simple sort of blended background with a giant circle in the middle. Could be a sun or a moon or however you interpret it. And I used 3 colors for the background. I used phthalo blue, we're going to call that dark blue, blue gray, and titanium white. Blue gray is a Liquitex Basics color that is sold separately. If you don't have blue gray or don't want to get blue gray, you can use any kind of gray and just mix a little bit of blue into it. I would guess like a phthalo blue, so mix a little bit of phthalo blue into your gray so you have like a bluish gray color. Or you can just use gray and not mix blue with it, so that's up to you. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm using a 3/4 inch flat wash brush. I'm going to load it into the water, kind of pat it dry, and I'm going to start in the center of the canvas and paint a big giant white circle. Later on we'll define the big circle later, so for now just kind of paint a circle like 4 or 5 inches wide. It can be smaller, larger, but later on we'll make it bigger. So just paint a big giant circle with a lot of white going in circular strokes. So I'm going to go out pretty far with this circle, about 6 inches in diameter. Again, don't worry about the size of the circle at this point. This white is going to be used to blend our blue-gray color next. So we need a lot of white on this canvas right here. So don't skimp out on your white right now. Then grab your blue-gray and mix the rest of your white with that blue-gray on your palette. We're going to start blending this blue-gray. And so when I blend a color, I usually start on the outside of that color. So I'm going to start on the outside of this circle and add our blue-gray going in a circular direction, and then bring it inwards to the white, and we're going to do wet on wet blending. So when our blue-gray goes in with the white, it will blend. When I go to reload my brush, I will load it in blue-gray and white. So again, you don't want to skimp out on that white. We'll be using a lot of white for this background. And so as I'm reloading, I'm grabbing more white because this part needs to be a light blue-gray before it can be like that pure blue-gray. And so I'm just doing that wet on wet blending with the white and the blue-gray, loading my brush in mostly white at this point. And it's blending onto the canvas. And just gently blend that into that white circle, trying to leave the circle as bright and white as possible, and grabbing more white and working my way outwards. Eventually this is going to get darker, and then I'll be adding more blue-gray to my brush. So about right here, grab some blue-gray and allow this sky to get darker. So right here we have that pure blue-gray, and starting on the outside and then blending it towards the middle part where that lighter blue-gray is. So we're creating a gradient of light in the middle, and it gets slightly darker. The corners are going to have our dark blue color, but I'm just blending that right now, blending that light color into the blue-gray color. In the upper left, same thing, blending that closer to the light blue-gray color. I'm going to add more white to my palette and utilize that white to help me blend those colors. So it is okay that there are streaks of unblended color in our sky. It does not have to be blended all the way. It's kind of the style here. It's okay to not blend your colors perfectly. There's going to be a lot going on in our painting, a lot of branches and leaves and blossoms, and our bird is going to be in the middle. So if our sky is flawed or not perfectly blended, that's okay. We're going to introduce our dark blue now, so without even rinsing my brush, I grabbed that dark blue and I'm going to work on my corners here. So even though we are working in the corners, we're still going in a circular direction, but that circle goes off the canvas at this point. So it might be a little tricky at first to blend our blue with our gray, but I found a trick that if you grab a little bit of white on your brush, that helps to get those colors to blend. So I started with that blue, the dark blue, worked the corner, got it to blend with the wet paint, that's the gray, grabbed white on my brush, and that white helped to blend that transition zone. So just kind of working those colors. It won't be the smoothest transition because we have a blue, a very deep, rich kind of blue, and it's turning gray all of a sudden. So again, using that white to let the gray and the blue blend together helps with that transition, but it does not have to be a perfect gradient by any means. It's kind of a swirly sky. So grabbing a little bit more white, blending that down. You want to be careful because phthalo blue is a very rich color that can take over very fast. So if we had too much blue on our brush and we're bringing that blue too close to the center, we might lose our pretty blue-gray color. We don't really want that. So I'm not going to over blend my gray and blue. I'm just going to have it be kind of a transition that's not as smooth but kind of streaky, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to do the same thing for each of the corners. You might find by the time you get to your third or fourth corner that your gray is dried up because acrylic paints, annoyingly sometimes, dries way too fast for us to blend them. But so if you need to grab more gray and white on your brush to get that gray back on that surface where you want to blend it and then go back and blend it into the blue, you might have to do that. I find maybe adding a teeny bit of water to your brush kind of helps extend the blending time, but you don't want to add too much water to this because we don't want it to drip down, or we don't want the water to seep under other colors that might be not dry yet. So teeny bit of water helps, but not too much water. I'm just going to keep working my colors here. I'm at the fourth corner here. I grabbed that blue, a teeny bit of water just to boost that flow a little bit. And I'm going to need to load my palette with some more colors here. So I'm going to grab some more of my blue-gray because my gray is definitely dry right there. So grabbing some fresh gray and blending that with the blue and then bringing that into the rest of the sky. Again, circular strokes, even though we don't see the full circle of this stroke right here, but we're still going in a circular direction. And it's okay if we have streaks of unblended color in there. It just makes it more interesting to look at. Adding some more white to my palette as well, grabbing that white and just going in here with that white, letting that titanium white do some of the work for us with the blending. Just be careful not to add too much white to your brush. The white is also a strong color that might take over fast. We want our sky to be sort of darker on the outer parts, so adding too much white won't help with that effort, but adding a little bit of white to the brush helps with the blending. So I think we can be done with our sky. If I kept working this, it might just be kind of turning the same colors. So we want to decide, okay, this is done. I have streaks in the sky and that is okay. I said earlier that we're going to define our circle, and we are going to do that, but we want to ensure that the canvas is dry before we get a circle and define this, because if I traced the circle on wet paint, that would not be fun. So when this sky is relatively dry, so you can take a break and come back, or use a blow dryer to dry it real quick. I found a bowl that is 6.5 inches wide, so a diameter of 6.5. You can use a compass if you have a compass. If you have something that's 6 inches or 5 inches or 7 inches, so something relatively a similar size. So any kind of circle found object anywhere in your house that's about 6.5 inches. That's if you're using 11 by 14 inch canvas. If you're using different size canvases, you might want to adjust your circle size. But basically, we're going to define our circle. So I just took that bowl and a pencil and traced a circle in the center, and then using a thin coat of titanium white, I'm going to paint that circle. So wherever that white paint didn't end up, I'm painting white over that, so I have a defined circle area. If you are doing your white and there's some blue still showing through, that's okay. This does not need to be 100% solid opaque white. In fact, I think it looks good. The little bit of that blue is showing through. It kind of adds to this sort of faded effect with the circle. So it should be super bright right in the center because we initially painted that bright white. But if there's a little bit of blue showing through on the edges, that is okay. So take your time. You can use the tip of your brush to define the outer circumference edge of your circle in just one relatively thin layer covering your circle. This next step is optional, but I'm going to dry brush some white strokes around the, we'll call it a moon, around the moon. And so just like some high clouds, some moonbeams. And basically I just loaded my brush in the white and wiped it off on a towel. So I have a soft rag handy, and this will allow you to take off most of the paint off your bristles, but there'll still be enough paint on your brush to where when you dry brush it, it'll be a very scratchy thin layer of paint, and we'll be able to see the under part through that dry brush. And this just helps with the transition of the bright moon to the rest of the sky. And again, optional if you're not feeling brave or don't feel confident with your dry brush stroke style. You don't have to do that step. Next, we are going to get these branches of our painting in. It's a major part of our composition. We have two large branches. We have one large one at the top and one large one at the bottom. I used raw umber and a number 8 round brush. I'll also be using a number 4 round brush. So we have this large branch at the top, large at the bottom, and everything's just kind of going around the moon and sort of hugging the moon. And our bird is in the center. So when we do these branches, we're going to have this natural big gap between the top and the bottom where our large blue jay is going to be situated. So you can draw these out first if you want with a pencil or a piece of chalk. I'm just going to go ahead and paint them in. So I'm using the raw umber color and a little bit of water in that paint to help get this to flow. So we want a nice flowy sort of stroke here to get this. And so I'm basically going to start with my branch at the bottom. I'm just going to kind of take my time, sort of sketch this branch. It's going to go in a curvy direction under our moon. This bottom branch does not touch our moon at all. It goes kind of around it, kind of contours the moon, but does not overlap it. So it is so all that space under our moon to the bottom of the canvas is what we have to work with these branches. Noticed how I started my branch out thicker and I made it thinner. That was on purpose. So your branches always start out thicker at the base. The edge of the line is kind of wobbly. It's not a smooth straight line at all. And our branch is starting to branch out. So I'm just extending the branch, adding branches that go out from the main branch. And each little branch that goes out from the main branch also starts out kind of thick and gets thinner. These little branches are also contouring in kind of a circular direction. So as I'm painting them, they are curving as well. You might find with these smaller branches that you'll need a smaller brush. So I'm going to grab my number 4 round. It's got more of a rounded tip to the edge of it versus that 8 round I'm using has more of a pointed tip to it. So that rounded tip I'm going to use because I want the edges of my branches to be kind of rounded a little bit. It's kind of a stubby edge. If you want them to be more pointed, you can do it that way if you prefer. I want these to be a little bit more rounded on the edge. So I'm just going back over some of my smaller branches that I painted and getting those tips to be a little bit more rounded. Again, grabbing my brown. It's okay if you need to add bits of water to your brown to help with the flow of that paint. It's a lot easier to paint these branches when the paint is slightly thinned down versus if we were using thick paint that doesn't spread as easily. And I'm just going to keep adding some more branches to this tree. And each little branch that kind of extends from the tree also goes in that curved direction. I'm going to leave the lower left corner relatively blank, but I want to add just one little branch sticking out over here. Again, you can add more or less branches depending on how you want your tree to look. I'm going to go ahead and do my upper branch. So this particular branch also starts up pretty high and dips down just like our other branch. It overlaps the top part of the moon and then curves back outwards, and the tip of that goes in a curvy direction with the rest of the swirly part of the circles kind of in the sky. So this one does overlap our moon. Sketch it out very slowly first and then go back over your stroke. So again, the base of that branch is thicker and then it goes thinner. And then we can go ahead and do the same thing. We can switch back to our little brush and do our branches. So each of these branches also kind of curve in our circle direction that we have going on in the background. So each little branch is going to go out and curve in a clockwise direction. And I'm also using that brush to make sure that the tips of those branches are a little bit more rounded and not necessarily pointed. I'll do one more branch that goes out over here and also curves. Go back over that to make the base slightly thicker. And again, you can add more branches or less depending on how you want it to look. And we can always add more branches later after we do the blossoms and leaves. So there's always a chance to go back and add more branches. I made the left part of this branch a little bit thicker, so I'm going back over that piece, and then I added just another branch down here, make that piece go up. And another piece kind of hanging out of it. So when you are done with your branches, you want to rinse your brushes off, set them to the side. Basically, we want our branches to dry a little bit before we add our green leaves because we don't want that green to mix with our brown very much. So you can take a little break and come back, or use a blow dryer to dry your painting real quick. And we're going to be doing the leaves next. So for our leaves, I used brilliant yellow green and light green permanent. So we're going to call it light green and I guess medium green and titanium white. So those three colors were used to make our leaves. If you look at the final painting, the leaves, they kind of have different tones of green. So there's some darker, some lighter. So we'll be utilizing those three colors to really just kind of make different color variations in our leaves. These are very basic leaf shapes. I'm using a number 4 round brush, and on the tips of the branches I'm just doing a leaf shape. If I have leaves that are overlapping each other, I will switch the colors. So that one I did a lighter green, but then I used that medium green to make my second leaf, and it overlapped it a little bit. So using your different greens creates color variations in your leaves. And you can also utilize your white, and that white, if you blend the white with any of those greens or just blend it on the canvas, will help create color variation. So a lot of the leaves actually do have a stem, so I painted like a little line extending from the branch and then attached my leaves to those lines. So most of these are sets of like 2 leaves, so I did like a little tiny green branch and added the leaf on the end of the line. The leaves are kind of going in different directions. They sort of go in the direction of that curvy thing that we have going on, but some of them are facing kind of more lower right at an angle. None of them are really facing to the left, if that makes sense, and I'm pretty sure that was done on purpose to make it look like the leaves are really just kind of going with the flow of the branches. But you can change and add some variety in the directions of your leaves. Most of the leaves are the same size, so I'm not making a variation in size for the leaves. They're all pretty much the same. There is variety because I'm changing the colors. I'm just going to add as many leaves as I want. You can add more or less depending on how you want this to look. Keep in mind that we will be adding a few pink blossoms in the tree, so you want to leave some gaps for your flowers. And then you want to do the same thing at the top. So my top sets of leaves, again, the direction, none of them are facing to the left. They're all facing kind of to the right or angled downwards or angled a little bit upwards, but not really angled to the left at all. And same kind of thing, adding the little tiny green stem and then attaching the leaf to it, grabbing different variations of that dark green, light green, and white to create some variety of colors. I'll add a few more leaves down here. It's okay if you need to overlap any of your leaves over your branches. Next, we will be painting the blossoms, so I'm going to load my palette with the colors I'll be using for my flowers. I used light pink, yellow oxide. I also used titanium white, so freshen some titanium white if you need to. These are very basic 4 or 5 petaled flowers using the number 4 round brush. And I started by mixing a little bit of white into my light pink. I'm going to go ahead and paint 4 petals, so just little oval shapes. As I'm reloading, I'm grabbing pink this time to create color variation, so there's a little bit of variation in that color. I can go back with the white, kind of make my petals look slightly different, but there's not a whole lot of detail in this flower. We're not making it look super real or anything. So there's my first 4 petaled flower, and I'm just going to keep on painting very simple flowers. So this one will have 5 petals, little oval shapes using that pink and the white. This one I tried to leave the center part a little bit blank, so there's some opening in the center. When we're done painting our petals, we'll go back with our yellow oxide and paint little dots in the center of each of our petals. But this is very, very simple flowers, non-realistic, easy, like 1 or 2 stroke petaled flowers. You can have them overlap your branches, or you can have them floating and then you can connect them to like a little stem later. So it doesn't really matter where you paint your flowers, just make sure that they're relatively close to your branches. Some of my flowers look like little buds, and I'll show you how to do that after I'm done painting my full opened flowers. So this one is a floater, but I will go back later and perhaps connect it, or it's okay if it just stays a floater and doesn't end up being connected to anything. You just want to make sure that they're very close to your branches. So I'm going to go in and do a little bud. So if you're doing the buds, it's just like 3 strokes and you're painting, it's like you're just painting 1 petal instead of 4 or 5. And so just doing the one little oval shape wherever I want my little bud to be. So the unopened flowers, that one's going to be over here, and I'll do another one over here, and I'll do going back with the white, kind of create that variation. So the bottom part of my little buds is a little bit brighter, so I'm just taking that white and kind of going back over that flower bud shape. And I'll do another one over here. A little bit of white on the base of that. Do another opened flower over here. So basically you're just painting all your little flowers until you feel like you have enough flowers. I didn't do too many because I didn't want to take away from the bird that's going to be featured in our painting. So kind of simplified it so it's not too busy. But just the few little flowers adds a very pretty effect to our tree. And so then you want to go ahead and rinse your brush, and you don't have to wait for your petals to dry to do this step. In fact, if our yellow oxide blends with our pink a little bit, that's fine. So I'm just taking the yellow oxide and the 4 round brush and adding that just on the tip, and I'm painting little dots in the center of each of my flowers. I'm not adding the yellow oxide to my little flower buds at all. It's just the opened flowers, painting little dots in the centers of all the flowers. And then I didn't wait for my buds to be dried to do this step, and it should be okay, even if the green mixes a little bit. So basically, I'm attaching my buds to the branches because they're all kind of floating. So I did like 2 strokes of green hugging the bottom of each of the flower buds, and then a little tiny stem that attaches to the branch. So this one didn't need a stem, but I just did the two little leaves kind of on the bottom that hug the base of that flower. And this one, so two little green strokes, adding a stem, very thin line that attaches to my branch. Same with this one, two little green strokes, and attaching that one as well. The one last thing I'm going to do with my sky background before we approach part 2 of this tutorial is paint little tiny stars kind of in the darker part. Kind of really just brings the whole sky background together, adds more interest and depth in our sky. And I'm doing that basically by taking my round brush and painting little dots in mostly the dark part. It doesn't really show up in the lighter part, but if you want to add bright stars to our lighter part, you can. Just kind of scattered throughout, little clusters of stars that show up in the background. You can try to vary it if you want, so make some dots a little bit larger and some dots a little bit smaller, depending on how much pressure you put on the brush. And we are finished with the sky portion of this painting. This actually makes an easy standalone design if you didn't want to add the bird to this. It's a very pretty blossom simple painting, so you can stop now if you want. Otherwise, we are going to move on to part 2 of this tutorial. I'm going to show you how to draw and paint your bird. So there is a template that you can download for this painting if you don't want to draw the bird. You can print that out and use graphite paper to place under the traceable and trace your bird. I'm going to show you how I drew my bird. So we can break this down into basic shapes and lines, kind of figure out where the placement of our bird is going to be. His tail's overlapping our branch, his body overlaps the majority of the room, and we can start by sketching out his body. He has kind of like an oval shaped body that kind of goes more narrow on the edges. So I did a curve for the back, a front curve kind of for his belly. So I'm just sketching that out. It takes up the majority of the size of that moon. So and our tail overlaps our branch. So this tail is kind of a triangular shape, kind of an isosceles triangle shape. And it curves on the base of the tail. So we have our tail overlapping the branch, two diagonal lines that go inwards towards the body. And the size of our tail is smaller than our body. The body is a little bit larger than our tail. I'm going to go back over my tail shape, make it a little bit darker. So this body shape is kind of like an oval shape that goes more narrow. And our head is just below that top branch, so I can sketch out his neck, draw a circle for his head. He's got that top crest piece that pretty much slightly overlaps our top branch. Go back over the back. So sketching that piece. And then our beak, kind of a longish beak shape, so a little triangle shape for the beak. That's not exactly in the center of that head, a little bit under that center point of the head. And then kind of a diagonal line under the beak. We have a little bit of a lump on the bottom where his feet are, and then I could sketch out like two little diagonal lines for his feet, little claws. It's okay if your claws are not touching your branch. If you left too much space above the bird, we can always paint another branch under our claws, or we can extend the claws down further, so don't worry about it touching the branch at this point. And kind of make this drawing a little bit darker. So after I do the initial sketch of dividing it up into lines and shapes, I can go back over and kind of make my drawing a little bit darker, the more confident I feel about my drawing. I'm not going to draw the eyes or the division of the colors yet. I just have the outer shape. So we have the basic sort of drawing of our bird in place, and we can go ahead and start painting it in, and we can adjust our drawing as we're painting it in. We did this in pencil. Pencil can erase. It's not permanent. So I'm loading my palette with the colors that I'm going to be using for the bird, and those colors consist of phthalo blue, bright aqua green, so there's a little bit of a turquoise color in the bird, titanium white, and Mars black, and also a little bit of yellow oxide that shows up kind of in the face and belly area. So I'm going to start by loading my number 4 round brush in the phthalo blue, and I'm going to start with the tail. So basically, just going to take that paint and just kind of drag it from the base, the bottom part of the bird's body, to the end of the tail. I'm just dragging that blue down to form the shape of his tail. So the color of the blue kind of fades out as I get to the tip of the tail. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of white on the tip of the brush and go back over that with the white and letting that blend gently with the blue. Grab a little bit of aqua, and then on the end of the tail, I'm just going to take that aqua and just kind of drag that up. I want to, the end of the tail has a little bit of like a scalloped end to that, but we can define that later. Right now, I'm just applying the colors. So there's my little scalloped edge. I can just take that and kind of define that. But I don't want to overblend my colors. I like the mix of the blue with the aqua and the white, and just dragging it, letting those colors kind of gently blend, kind of creates a feather texture by leaving that unblended. And then we can go back later and add more detail to this tail if needed. And then next I'm going to start applying the blue to the other areas of our bird. I'm going to take this dark blue and I'm going to do some short sort of curved strokes to outline the shape. So I'm working on the back right now, grabbing just the blue, filling this in with kind of a curved stroke. And then right here, so we have a sort of division where our belly is. So I took that blue, but I didn't take that to where the line is that I drew. I left a space, a gap, where the white part of the bird, the under part of the bird, the belly area, is kind of a white / cream color. So I'm going to leave that blank. And then I took the blue and sort of just loosely outlined, almost like I'm sketching as I'm painting this, just loosely outlining the crest, the top of the head, back of his head, back of his feather. And I'm just taking that and painting that shape, going in the sort of contouring direction to really define the areas that I want to be blue. I can also gently outline that line that I drew with the pencil, but I'm not going to outline that with a very thick line. It's going to be a very, very thin, loose line. This is going to provide contrast to where when I paint the belly area white, it'll stand out a little bit from that white that we painted in the moon. So just outlined the belly area with a very, very thin layer of blue on the tip of the brush. And then rinse the brush and grab your titanium white, and you can start painting the belly area. So this part right here, curved strokes going in a curved direction to fill that area. There's like a little lump right here that attaches to his foot. So paint that white. But there is a division of where that blue stops. So he's got kind of like a side wing where that blue is. So I'm not going to paint white over that. I'm just taking that white, kind of curved stroke right here. little bit of that blue mixed with that white, and that's okay. We can always go back and add another layer to that if we don't want that to be too blue. So then I'm going to start filling in his side wing area. So this whole area on the left are his back wings. His wings are kind of just to his side. And so I'm just going to take it right now. I want to fill this area in. So I'm doing kind of these curved sort of contouring strokes here. I'm utilizing that aqua color, and I'm just letting that aqua gently blend with my phthalo blue. So on the top part, it's going in kind of a curved area. The bottom part, also kind of a curved area. The back, curved to kind of form more of his shape. Adding some more blue, but just not over blending it. I want to have that color variation. So those are his back feathers. And then the top of his head has also like a little area of blue that meets to the top of his beak. Add a few more strokes of blue in his tail. And then I'm going to utilize the black in this. I'm going to rinse my brush and dry and grab the Mars black. And so the black areas include the beak, the eye. There's like a black area right here between his, like right under his crest and on the side of his face. There's like this black sort of division area. And so I'm going to define that. It kind of goes down, then it curves, and then goes to the right side of his head underneath his neck area. And then there's like a little tiny point that goes outwards to the right. And then his beak is also black, so I can paint his beak in. That solid coat of black. And then we're going to do his eye. So for the eye, you might want to switch to a smaller round brush for this because it's a little intricate detail, but I like to twist my brush so that the paint goes right there on the tip of the bristles. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint the eye. So it's just a basic sort of oval shape that's pointed on each side. So basic small eye shape. And then up here, there's a little bit of black that kind of goes down to a point and goes a little bit to the right. Look at the position of the eye. It's the bottom of the eye is kind of lined up to the top part of his beak. So that's the position of the eye. A little bit of black above the beak. And then we can take this black and add some details on his tail feather. So on the tip of his tail feather, I'm doing these little scalloped curved lines kind of on the tip, but also inside the tail feather as well, just little kind of staggered curved lines. And then I'm going to take that black and add some dark shadowing to the side wings, so just curvy strokes, but not doing it super hard. I'm not pressing hard with my brush, just very light, sort of dry brushed black strokes on the wings. Then I'm going to rinse and dry and double load my brush in the yellow oxide and titanium white. So I'm going to use the yellow oxide to kind of add a golden color to his face. And I'm just going to start under his beak area. So this should be very light. So the yellow oxide is mixed with that white. It should show up a very pale sort of yellow color. And then on the side of his head. So this is going to give the bird kind of a golden color in his face, but also allowing this white to be kind of warm is going to make it stand out from the white that we have in the background. So there's a little bit of contrast when we use this yellow oxide. And so I'm just kind of contouring the strokes around his eye, just kind of filling up his face area with that. And then I made a little bit of extra yellow on the edge of that to make that just a tiny bit darker on the edge. And I did the same thing for the belly area. So the belly area has a little bit of that golden color on the far right edge, and then I'm filling it in with more of the lighter color, the white. And then I took that white and kind of had it go over that black area a little bit, kind of dragging that into that black area. Few strokes of white kind of on the side wing area. So just taking that brush and the white, just kind of flicking the brush, going in this curvy direction to create those feather strokes. Then I can start painting the feet in. So I'm going to double load my brush in black and the yellow oxide color. You're going to get kind of a weird yellow-black combination when you double load this. So basically, just want to paint my feet in. So I'm doing the legs. So just painting the line for the leg. And then our claws are going to go over the branch. So I'm going to extend my claws so that they paint over my branch. If you drew your bird and the legs don't touch the branch area, you can always go and paint your branch in after, like paint another branch that attached to the little claws. So you can add white if you need to, especially the part that goes over the branch. The white can help that part stand out a little bit better, and you're just doing little curved lines that kind of hug the branch. I'm going to take a little bit of that blue and I'm going to loosely outline this part right here. So that part where our kind of belly area of the bird meets the moon, to create some contrast there, I just loosely outline that with the blue so that we can see that part of the bird. And I'm just adding a little bit of blue to the back, kind of making his back a little bit more rounded and arched. Few lighter strokes on his crest. And a few more lighter strokes on the wings area. Then I'm going to rinse and grab white just on the tip of the brush. I'm going to do a little bit of highlight inside his eye, so a little tiny white dot on the right part of his eye and an even smaller dot in the upper left part of the eye. So 2 little dots in his eyes, and also a little highlight, little white curved stroke on the top part of his beak. And then I'm going back and adding some more lighter feather strokes on the blue part, a few little diagonal strokes on the tail. And a few curved strokes on the branch where his claws are hugging the branch. So using that white kind of makes that stand out a little bit better. And we are pretty much done with the blue jay. If you have any leftover pencil marks still showing from the initial drawing, you can recommend waiting for this to dry for the most part, and then just getting an eraser and gently erasing any pencil marks that might still be showing through. You wouldn't be able to erase pencil marks that are showing through the paint, but these are just marks that I did not end up using painting over. So I'm just erasing those and gently kind of wiping little eraser marks away. And we are finished with this painting. So I hope that you enjoyed painting a blue jay with swirly sky and blossoms with me. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.